Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mount Olive Township Workshop and Council Meeting for March 19, 2019. If you would all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence for all those men and women that serve and protect us and made the ultimate sacrifice.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Susan, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act, please?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Here.
Mr. Ferrante?
Here.
Mrs. Labow? Here. Mr. Mania?
Here,
Mr. Stewart? Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Nacastro?
Here. Just a couple of quick announcements. If you're here for the bond for the sewer, that will be at the end of the council meeting for that. And also, we have a executive session that we're going to be moving to the end of the council meeting versus here at the workshop, just so we all know that. Right now, we have the honor of recognizing our Mount Olive Junior Wrestling program. Andrew?
Yep, thank you, Council President. Before the coach comes up, I just have a few fun facts to read about the program. The program has grown from only about 30 kids in 2011 to over 100 over the last few years. The group is 100% community-based volunteer organization with the goal of promoting youth wrestling and building the foundation for the Mount Olive High School program. The program has won 3 consecutive Tri-County Youth Wrestling League championships, has won 4 consecutive Northwest Jersey Youth Wrestling League championships, and this league represents over 40 different communities in northern New Jersey. And there are 20 individuals from this program in the 2019 that have qualified for the New Jersey Youth State Individual Tournament. So, Coach, if you'd like to come up, there's some certificates here for the coaches and the wrestlers to give out and take a photo.
Okay. Before I start, just real briefly, I just want to say thanks to Mayor Greenbaum and the town council for inviting us tonight. Obviously, we travel as a pretty big crew, and these kids put in a lot of work this year, and it's really nice that they get to have their efforts recognized. Just last week was the New Jersey State Tournament, so we're officially done for this year. And as Andrew mentioned, you know, we're 100% community based. Supported by the rec department, and we're pretty proud of the fact that as a rec program, we get the support from Jill and her team, and as far as facilities go, the school facilities from Mr. Fellini, and you know, we really try to make it a community-based thing where we're really promoting Mount Olive through the program. So thanks again to everybody. I'm going to call you guys up. When I call your name, I want you to just come up and sort of stand here and stay there, okay? If I call a name and the kid's not here, I'm just going to move to the next one. I'm just going in order of the way these were printed. So, Nick Bacigalupo. Just come get your... Should I do it? Nick. Hurry up, bud. Jack Bacigalupo. Jack Basterica, who is our first, I think first ever New Jersey State Wrestling Champion last weekend. Christian Barris, Brandon Barres, Tyler Venus, Justin Bullock, Vincent Carpini, Justin Christopher Castro, Carter Cafone, Drew Capolo, Brody Cumming, Tyler Cumming, Nick D'Amico, Danny D'Amico, Christian Dobek, Matteo Eagleson, Gavin Falsitano, Matthew Farley, Nicholas Gonzalez. Tyler Hagenson. Braden Hammond. Nakai Hernandez. Robert Hubbard. Lucas Katsiganis. Justin Kay. Michael Koroski. Shane Kostakis. Gage Latta. Jared Martini. Jake Martini. Thomas McDonald. I don't think he's here. Troy Migliaccio. Anthony Moscatello. Connor Norris. Nicholas Orzillo. Tanner Perez. Nicholas Podgorski. Jack Rawa. Cole Rebels. Jaden Rush. Oh, wrong one. Sampath Saja. Emmanuel Sakasella. Xander Tatum. Cody Taylor. Lincoln Utes. It's weird. Huh. Looks like we missed Jackson Utes, one of our 8th graders. Oh, no, we didn't. They're out. That's their. Oh, never mind. Jackson Utes. I thought he'd be next after his brother. Dylan Volpe. And last but not least, with the Z last name, Cole Zenowitz. And then any coaches that are here, well, you want me to read them too? Sure. All right. Bob Schurntz. And we may have missed one or two. I think we have everybody that helped out. Dominic Volpe, he's not here.
My son's resting.
We'll go with the kids. Mike Latta. Is Mike here? Me. Sean Bullock, he's not here. Gil Muscatello, I don't think he's here. Mike Koroski. Scott Eagleson. Sean Rawa. And Chris Rebels. Whoops. All right, hey, thanks everybody. This is really cool. We're gonna take a picture. Do you want to squeeze them together?
Yeah, you're going to have to squeeze it.
2 or 3 lines.
Hey, Coach Sherns.
I know the feeling.
A couple people on their knees, standing. Yeah, she was here today with us.
I know. I saw her pulling like a lot of kids.
He was my son's wrestling coach. Sherns. He'd been around.
It's nice to have a crowd.
Yeah.
They were waiting for her.
I think over 25 people, Susan gets a bonus. Meetings, that's how it works out.
Where are we looking?
I think a lot of people may leave now. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, please, thank you. Okay.
Smile.
Wow. We're ready.
We need a picture.
I can't.
Picture. Good. I got a blank.
If you're gonna hide, you gotta do it. Now it looks like you're the moderator. I usually just run. I go to the side.
Coach Schertz, how are you? Good to see you. You're still, God bless you. God bless you. Oh,
I could give them a few minutes, right? They can stay if they want, but good news.
he
if you're
produced
gonna leave,
the
you
state
won't be
champion.
offended.
Yeah,
We did, state champion. Now the state trip.
now's the time. Congratulations. We welcome you all. Good job, guys. But now's the time. If you want to leave, now's the time to leave unless you want to stay for the rest of the meeting. We'll give you a couple of minutes. Thank you.
That's good.
There we go.
See, Mike?
That'll open up a few seats.
Take care.
Good night.
Oh, yeah. You should have been here for a while.
How we hit with the first.
Mr. Latta.
Thank you. Take care. Take care.
Is Cozy here? Where is he?
Okay.
One yesterday that I wrote about the States.
How are you?
Surviving. How are you?
I'm surviving.
Don't run out of here after.
Huh? Good.
Oh, this is great. I got 2 blocks on there.
Did you drove together? 4-hour shifts. She got a ticket.
Thank you. See you.
Reckless driving. She was doing 86 miles. He said she was doing 86 miles an hour, which constitutes reckless driving, and you got to appear in court. I says I can't appear in court. I live in New Jersey. I'm 6 hours away. Well, you need to get an attorney.
Fred wouldn't even give
So,
me the night off.
attorney sent letters.
Sure can. Whatever she wants.
They were
That is all I want to say.
$350. They'll represent you.
You know, those people that left don't know what they're missing.
I know. Excitement.
And it's a 6-point ticket, and they said I could probably get it knocked down to 2 points.
You figure it's half and half.
James here, James Bazinski's here.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe just so. And then say so make sure everybody gets in, you know? Just never know.
Okay, we're going to continue on. And the next item on the agenda, we have 13 resolutions. Does anyone have any questions or on the resolutions?
Nope.
Okay. Seeing none, we have one ordinance for second reading. Does anyone have any questions on that? Seeing none. Does anyone have any old business? Seeing none, does anyone have any new business? Mr. Roman?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sure most of us have been aware, especially with comments on Facebook, of people still continuing to go past school buses when the stop arm is extended. And I had been holding back, seeing if the Board of Ed was going to end up doing something. I think we had made communications to them about a year ago. I have not seen anything come out of them that I'm aware of. And I would like the administration to reach out to the police department, to the chief, to see if there's something that we can either form a committee or something to move action on it, whether it also means maybe partnering with neighboring townships like Washington Township, especially if it requires, and I'm sure it will, the purchasing of equipment. But I think we can't avoid the problem yet. Because unfortunately, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that we're going to have a tragedy, you know, within our own borders, and I think we have to do something, at least create a plan of action, you know, because to stop it. Because I witnessed it myself a couple of months ago, and you know, every once in a while we see people posting videos of just police cars running past our school buses with the stop arm out. So if,
Police cars or any cars?
No,
you
no,
just said-
people of cars going past the school buses when they have the stop arm. You know, there's plenty of
I thought you
equipment
said
out there, there's
police cars.
stop arm cameras. But we obviously need to investigate what system will best fit our needs and whether that requires an ordinance on our part. But we definitely have to do something and move ahead with this.
Mr. Romans, it sounded like you said police
Police
cars,
cars.
but you didn't, just so
No.
for the
No,
record.
no,
It
you're
wasn't about
correct.
police
Yeah.
cars passing. It just sounded
You know,
that way, so it's right.
unfortunately, I have this habit of the mouth moves faster than the brain.
Right.
Andrew?
Well, I don't want to overstep on the Board of Ed's, you know, the school buses are obviously their property. I'd like to first reach out to the superintendent and see
Right,
if they have
I
any
agree.
plans, and then we'll take it from there.
We'll take it from there.
Good point.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Anything else in new business? Mrs.
I
Igo?
just want to add to that, if, I understand that the school buses are Board of Ed's property, but breaking the law on the street is police. So, you know, that's why I'm not, figure we're gonna have to do something together. And it's not just this town, where my grandson goes to Roxbury and we bring him to the bus, and even the one day, a transportation van actually blew right past the bus with the lights on, and the bus driver, he goes, no, that guy should know better.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah,
it's people not paying attention.
Yeah, they don't anymore, unfortunately, but you'll look into it with the Board of Ed, and then we'll take it and see what kind of action from there if we need any.
Yep.
I
Thank you.
spent some time in Florida. You ought to see it happen down there. Oh, my God.
It's just, it's so
Any other new
scary.
business? Seeing none. Anyone from the public want to be heard at this time? There'll be a public portion in the council meeting after this, but just for the record. Anyone now? Seeing none, close to the public. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Open up the Mount Olive Township Council meeting for March 19, 2019. Susan, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act, please?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Here.
Mr. Ferrante?
Here.
Mrs. Labow?
Here.
Mr. Mania?
Here.
Mr. Stewart? Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Nacastro?
Here. Mr. Andy Amianda, would you approve the minutes from the March 5th workshop and public meeting, please?
Yes, Mr. President. I make a motion for approval of minutes of previous meetings on March 5, 2019, work session and public meeting. J. Mania and A. Roman were absent.
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
yes.
Mr. Mania?
Abstain.
Mr. Roman?
I'm saying,
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Next item is Mr. Ferrante. Would you make a motion to accept the resolution RE self-examination of budget? Just a motion to
Just-
accept resolution self-examination of budget.
I make a motion to accept resolution regarding the self-examination of the budget.
Thank you.
Second.
Resolution number 1.
Thank you. Any comments, any questions? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, close to the public. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. We have 19 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone have anything to say on those, or questions? Seeing none, I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 9-2019, a bond ordinance providing for sewer improvements to the Old Flanders area of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey, for a sewer utility appropriating $1 million, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1 million in bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof, and directing a special assessment to the cost thereof. Ms. Labow?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption and final passage of ordinance number 9-2019.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time on the ordinance? I'm sorry?
I'm not sure how this works.
But it's, okay, what happens is, if you have anything, you're gonna go up to the podium here, people can state their name and address for the record. I'm just gonna ask everyone, we have a lot of people to get them in, if everybody wants to speak, try and keep it to like 5 minutes, and we'll try and, just so everybody can speak. And, you know, we'll listen to everybody that we can.
And this
Just
is
state your name and
regarding
address.
this ordinance only.
This is for this ordinance only right now.
For the sewers.
For the sewers, right now, yep. So just a name and address for the record in the microphone, then you're fine.
John Petzinger,
Can you spell your
70
last
Main.
name?
I'm sorry?
Can you
Spell
spell
your-
your last name, please?
Petzinger.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, it's the first time attending this, but I know I can't afford this. You know, maybe these people can, I can't. I can barely make my mortgage now. All these additional costs, it's gonna kill me. It's gonna kill me and my family. I already work 2 jobs, so I don't know how you guys came up that this is okay to shove it down the homeowners' throats. You know, and that's the way I'm taking it. I don't know, again, I don't know how this works, but I know, you know, I can't afford it. I don't know what grants, was there grants looked into or sought after from the state of New Jersey, from the Department of, or, you know, the DEP? You know, I'm not sure.
I believe, just so you know, the process, I believe, Andrew, we had sent out, the whole thing started, I mean, a long time ago, obviously. There were surveys that were sent out.
There were surveys done prior to me coming
Right.
on board, and then right before I came on board, about August, the council passed the resolution to move forward on this project, which is where I kind of took over. And then from that period on, I've communicated 2 or 3 times with the neighborhood, with what was called an informational manual explaining the project, the costs involved, what type of sewer system was going on. It was revised a couple times because it went from a gravity system to a pressure system, so the cost changed. So we did try to notify the public as much as possible throughout this whole process. And then now, obviously, we're at the point where, you know, the engineer has the designs approved by the DEP, permits are finalized. And now it's just the point where we're doing the public hearing for the special assessment before we take the next step, which would be to go out to bid for construction.
Correct. And we do want to hear from the public. That's why I want to hear from everyone here tonight as well. And I appreciate you coming up to let us know, because we do want to hear from you.
And that's it. I mean, that's, as long as you guys say it's good to go,
What's
it's
his
good to
address?
go.
What's your, I'm sorry, yeah, what's
I didn't
your
get your
address?
address. What's your address?
70 Main Street, Flanders, New Jersey. I also just got notification, I'll be deploying for the 4th time in August, which will leave my wife and kids with this. You know, all these additional costs, you know, you talk about the 15,000, for me, I think it's about 15, 18,000. Then you gotta cap it, then what, to maintain it every quarter is another $150 bill. You know, the cost to cook up, we don't know what that is. You know, I understand you can't provide any contractors, a conflict of interest or whatever, but these are all costs. Like, where do you think we're coming up with this money? I can't. I don't know what these guys can do, but I can't. I mean, I bought the house in 2009 knowing that I had a septic. Negligence of your septic system, it does not mean, does not give you the right to force it down our throat. You know, if I fail to put oil in my car, you know, buy me a new car? Negative. You know, I don't feel that, I'm not opposed to the sewer project, I'm opposed to the cost that it's being put on the homeowner. So, I you know, like you to reconsider, or grants, you know, was there, what grants, was there grants sought after?
There have been some grants looked into, and from the agencies that I've spoken to, there were none that would offset the project at this time. You know, moving down the road, they might open up, you never know, but I did research a community development grant through the county, which unfortunately that neighborhood does not qualify for those grants. There was another one that I was researching, but there was no, you know, commitment on any grant funding for this project.
I mean, I just feel like it's bad enough, it's hard enough to live in this state. You know, I'd like to think that, you know, my municipality would, you know, step up and say no, you know, and absorb some of this. I know Toll Brothers was just built. I don't know how much tax revenue that brought in. Siemens, I didn't see any tax breaks for any of this. You know, where's all that money going? Where's all that money? Why isn't any money allotted to the infrastructure if it's that detrimental to the old Flanders section? Then why was there no money allotted to it?
Well, the way this works is the governing body hasn't voted yet this evening. So what they want to do is hear from everybody, and then they'll deliberate here and make a decision. So your comments are, it's not a done deal. It's
No, I
something
understand,
they're
but
gonna do.
as Andrew, this has obviously been going on for a year.
Right.
I travel a lot in the military, so I travel a lot, so I'm not always subjected to all the correspondence taking place.
Right.
I did know, I reached out to Andrew a couple weeks ago, and he said this would be a hearing. I did receive a certified letter. Now here I am.
Right. And with respect to the budget, we'll stick with this project, but I understand your question. So if I could just tell you one thing that's important to note, that I think it's the last 7 years, the municipal budget has not increased. So, well, maybe the county and some other sources have, or the schools, but the municipal budget has been zero increase, which is, it's commendable, and it's the residents and the governing body doing that. But to your point, I think you'll hear other residents speak, and so will the governing body, and then later on, they'll vote on the ordinance or decide what they want to do. So you're part of the process right now.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? You can go up to the podium and state your name and address if you do.
Good evening, council members. My name is Matthew Johnston. I'm at 19 Park Place. I'm here as a resident of the community, and I'm also here because I'm a real estate attorney in town. I think many of you know that. And I also wanted to come up because I do know that there's a lot of confusion on the one hand and also concern about financial aspects of this project. On the one hand, I feel that this is a very expensive project, but it's one of those projects that unfortunately in life, you're going to have to deal with this situation at some point in time. As a real estate attorney, unfortunately, I have the opportunity to see a lot of people that try to sell a home, find out that their septic system is in failure, don't even realize their septic is in failure, and they end up having to spend out of pocket tremendous sums of money, depending on where you are and what type of house you have. It can far exceed the amount of money that unfortunately you have to put out of pocket up front to put this in. And unfortunately, Park Place, for example, not as much Main Street, but Park Place, those of you that are familiar with the town, of the street, Park Place is one of those roads that are very close to the river. We're in floodplains, most of us. So if one of our septics fails, it would be extremely expensive, if not almost impossible, to put a system in that would qualify under the DEP regulations. It would be exorbitantly priced. If this project did not go through, if this project does not go through, it will put most people on Park Place, including myself, in all honesty, and all the other people there that have septic systems, at a very big disadvantage, both in costs and also in circumstances. I have a small business there. I know that there are other small businesses at that location. This project has been sought after by people on the street for a long time, not because we're trying to take advantage of anyone's bad situations or financial situations, but because I think most of the people on the road know that when you do have a problem with the septic system, it has to be dealt with one way or another. And new septic systems range upwards of $50,000 depending on what type of system you have to put in. Far more than what we're going to have to put out of pocket here. Now, I personally am going to have to take a loan out for the installation costs. My understanding is from the literature that I've received from the board and from the town that we get to pick our own contractors for the installation. So there's an opportunity that we can shop around and hopefully get someone that would work with people on Main Street and Park Place to maybe make a deal with us where if we all pool ourselves together, perhaps we can find a way to minimize the out-of-pockets that we're going to have to suffer. If not, I personally am going to have to take a loan because it's important to get the system in, because my system is probably 30-some years old, and I know that it's going to have a problem probably sooner than later. And for that reason, I'm taking a pragmatic stand. I don't like putting money out of pocket. I don't like wasting money. I would also, of course, this is more to the public than to the board, but remind you that as a real estate attorney, it's much easier to sell your house when you have the availability of a sewer system, as opposed to having a septic system. I go through this a lot with my realtors that I deal with. Most people coming from outside of Mount Olive aren't familiar with them, are scared of them, and they would look at a house with a sewer system more so than a septic system if they could. It also will, although it doesn't matter much now to the folks that aren't selling their house, it's going to raise your values up over time. In my experience, that's been something that usually occurs after you have a septic system replaced with sanitary disposal systems like this. So in the long run, it'll benefit us. I think on a personal level, it is a little pricey. It's just part of the way it has to happen, I believe. I don't think that the town has been unreasonable in the amount of money that they're talking about. It is pricey, but pragmatically speaking, I think it's a great idea. I understand also that the gas company is going to be installing gas lines at the same time that the sewer system is being installed, which would greatly benefit many of the people on the road also, lowering the cost of heating expenses over oil or other things. And for that reason, I'm fully in support of it. I appreciate the time that the council has taken in putting this together and taking it seriously and looking to the future, at least on Park Place. And as a member of the community and also a local attorney, if any of the members of the public that are affected ever want to come and visit with me and see if we can figure out ways to reduce the costs, I'm always open for a discussion and to try and help out as much as I can. But I do want to thank the board, and I do fully support the installation of the sewer system, even though it is a costly expense. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just please go up to the front and state your name and address, whoever.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kim McBurney, McBurney. I live at 60 Main Street. I've lived there about 16, 17 years. And I'm a single mother and a school teacher, and I don't know where I'm going to get the funds to pay for this. And I know that it will eventually raise the costs of, my property if I decide to sell, but it will also probably raise my taxes because my house will be reassessed at a higher price, and then my taxes will go up, which go up every year anyway. So if you ask me, it's overwhelming to me. I don't like to think about it. I try to avoid it. I don't know how on a school teacher's salary, I'm, like I said, a single mother. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford to do this. That's really basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. State your name and address, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mi-kyung Kim, K-I-M. I live at 8 Park Place. I'm the pastor of the Flinders United Methodist Church. And Linda Mason.
Linda Mason, and I'm one of the trustees of the church.
Yes.
And I totally understand where...
Can you put this in a microphone, please, a little bit?
I totally understand where some of the people are coming from. I've been there in different situations, different towns. But we are for the septic system. As the other gentleman stated, the cost, we have 3 buildings, and the cost of replacing the septic systems would be astronomical.
Yes.
But my heart does go out for people that are going to struggle paying for the installation.
So on behalf of the Flinders,
Yes, I do.
Yes, on behalf of the Flinders United Methodist Church, we have 3 properties, actually, church, 2 Park Place, and thrift shop, 4 Park Place, and parsonage, 8 Park Place. So it's a really challenging project, but at the same time, we recognize that all the septic system will fail sometimes. So actually, we have a hard decision in long run. It's time to install the storage system. That's our conclusion of church council and trust decision. So in the long run, it's challenging, but it's time to move on the next system, sorting system. That's our church decision. So we want to vote for, we want to favor for the sorting system installation. But it's obviously challenging because we have 3 properties, which is more challenging, actually 3 times challenging. But at this point, we want to vote for the system. That's our, yes, sorting project. That's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this time want to get up to speak, please?
Don Williams, 26 Flanders Street, Town Road, but I own property down on Main Street. My concern is, I've never seen this township bring anything in on budget. And I'd really like to see a citizens committee of just plain people. There's a lot of smart people who live down in this area. And I'd like to see a committee to oversee this, the cost on this project, because this thing can get out of hand. You've valued at $1 million. I've never seen you bring anything under more than 3 times what the original cost was supposed to be. And as it is now, I did some quick math, and we're supposed to do this in 20 payments twice a year. It's about $750 a payment, and that's without interest. And what is the interest rate on this? There's a lot of questions. What type of a system are you putting in? Is this a pressure system, a vacuum system, or is it going to be gravity? There is a way to get a gravity system down through there because it's flat if you start in the middle of Flanders and go straight out through the meadows. Otherwise, you got a 35-foot mountain, and if you put in a gravity feed, you're going to be 45 feet in the ground, which is impractical. Has anybody researched this? Do we have engineers from the area that worked on this? Real engineers?
We do.
Know what they're doing? These are my questions. I realize a lot of the houses there need this system, but I'm just scared of this township. I really am.
Alex has, Mr. Rowan, Gene's going to, Brzezinski, the engineer's here, so.
I'm real.
A real engineer.
First off, Mr. Williams, I unfortunately, I feel like I need to address your previous comments that all our projects end up being 3 times over cost. There's not been a single project that I am aware of, and I doubt you could ever find, since I've been part of this council, that has ever come anywhere near close to going over budget. Also, when you make the statement that this was not research, I don't think you've been paying attention, or maybe not reading your mail, but we've been at this for over 6 years between engineers and plans.
Tell me what kind of system is going in there.
I will let the expert and the real engineer answer that for you.
We went through different
I couldn't find 5 things on my subdivision. Okay, great, go ahead. I'll listen to you.
We went through different alternatives. We started with a gravity sewer. There's concerns with the gravity sewer and also getting underneath the existing culvert. The system is a low pressure system with grinder pumps at each of the properties. It saves money compared to the other system, because in order to get into where we're going to tie into existing pipe and manhole in Flanders Crossing, it was going to be way too expensive. So that's when we went to low pressure system. Basically, it'll be a 2-inch line in the roadway, and the laterals will be 1.5 inch laterals going to the grinder pump. Then from the grinder pump to the house, that's the homeowner's responsibility. It's probably the least expensive system compared to, a lot less expensive than gravity sewer. I believe you received some information regarding the system, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's in a nutshell, that's what it is. Roughly 2,800 feet of main line, 2-inch pipe. There's another 2,000 feet roughly of laterals, 40 grinder pumps. The estimated cost was $609,000. We put in a 20% contingency, just in case for unseen things, and that would come up to about $831,000. That's the engineering construction cost of it. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be 3 times the cost.
Mr. Roman?
Andrew, the proposed plans and so far all the materials regarding this project, are they available for the public to see whenever they wish?
Yes, we do have a set of plans. We brought one here with us.
I have two sets of plans. I can leave with you if you like.
Yeah, we could leave them here.
Can make them available.
Thank you.
Ms.
Anything
Lego?
else at this point?
Yes, Jean, this way. Look at the dais, Jean.
Colleen's calling. I know, it goes out of the
Jean.
back.
It comes out of the back.
I know, it
That's
comes out
fine.
of the back. The grinder pumps, are they included in the township
Yes.
part of it?
Yes.
Not the homeowners?
No,
And-
the town pays for the main and the lateral up to the grinder pump.
Grinder
including the
pumps.
grinder pump.
Right. And also, I just want to point out that the grinder pumps, the town will always take care of those for maintenance. It's not going to be,
That's up to,
well, that's
the governing
what
body, I
we've
would
done
say.
before.
Yes.
Right, because that's how we've done it with the other
Light.
systems. Yeah, Bud Light, when there's grinder pumps, because we wanted to make sure that they were serviced properly and effectively. So that's going to be thankfully a price, a concern you won't have to have. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Hi, my name's Nanette Winch, and unfortunately my husband Ray couldn't be here tonight. He's working. So he prepared a statement that I'd like to read to you on behalf of myself and my husband. We live at 27 Park Place, Flanders. We also own and operate Walt's Barber Shop at the same address. We strongly support the proposed sewer extension. We are concerned to hear that there is a possibility that the sewer extension for Old Flanders may not pass due to recent complaints by some residents. We would like to note that it is virtually impossible to get 100% agreement for this type of improvement. There will always be some opposition. Every individual has a different circumstance. Some may be elderly and feel their septic system will outlive them. Some may live alone and feel their septic is adequate for their needs. But while everyone has their own particular circumstance, it is important to consider that individuals come and go, but the properties remain. One of the most vocal opponents from the last time sewers were proposed has since moved, and someone different lives there now. The more relevant question is, do the properties need sewer service? All you need to do is walk down Park Place and it becomes immediately apparent that these properties are a textbook example of the type of lots that need sewer service. Most of the lots would be considered non-conforming if you had to install a septic system today. In many cases, it is impossible to meet the required setbacks. To make matters worse, we are in the Highland Zone and many of the properties back up to Drakes Brook and other watercourses. Eventually, the Band-Aid style patches we are doing to our septic systems will not be allowed. As residents and second-generation business owners, we are concerned that in the future, the state will pass stricter environmental regulations without taking into consideration our ability to comply. This will force us to install alternative systems that are likely to be extremely expensive to install and maintain. This poses a huge financial risk for this area. By extending sewer service, this governing body can eliminate the risk and solve a problem that will only get worse with time. The window of opportunity to fix this problem is closing. The sewage treatment plant currently has capacity reserved for Old Flanders. If we do not extend sewers now, the capacity will not be there when the situation inevitably turns from serious to critical. If the council does not approve this proposal, it will simply be kicking the can down the road to a time when there will be few, if any, good options. Regarding support for this proposal, it has been our experience that there is overwhelming support. When we spoke to Dorsey and Semrau on the phone regarding the signatures for accessing the grinder pumps, for assessing the grinder pumps, the person handling this matter noted that he quickly received signatures from a majority of the letters. He said that it is uncommon to receive that enthusiastic a response to a mailer asking for signatures. We understand that the estimated $12,000 hookup cost may be difficult for some residents. There is, however, precedent to defer the hookup requirement for the elderly, those who are more than 100 feet from the sewer line, and those who can demonstrate financial hardship. All residents would, of course, be required to pay the assessment. Since the assessment will be payable over 15 or 20 years, that should not cause financial hardship, and it will provide protection to those with financial struggles when their septic system inevitably fails. Rather than having to install a costly new system, they can simply hook up to the existing sewer line. It is better to defer hookup for the few who are having difficulty than it is to put the majority at great financial risk. Water service was extended to Park Place in the early 1970s. We paid off the water assessment over time, and I can honestly say that in the time between then and now, I have never heard anyone say they wish they had a well instead of city water. We are thankful that the Town Council of 1971 had the foresight and the care to be good stewards for the Old Flanders section of town. Given that there is overwhelming support for this project, the properties are badly in need of this service, the treatment plant has available capacity, interest rates are low, and there has been a significant amount of planning and work already invested, we encourage the council to vote to approve this proposal. We hope that this council can demonstrate multi-generational thinking as the 1971 council did. We thank you for your service to our township and your thoughtful consideration of this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public at this time?
Hi everyone, I'm Susan Anderson and I'm on 63 Main Street. I've lived here my whole life. My father actually put in those water lines that Nanette talked about. And I've seen the homeowners changed hands. They were older, now it's a much younger crowd. And some are a product of divorce like I am, and some are up and coming with little kids, one income homes. I personally cannot afford it. I'm a full-time student. I make $10 an hour. To do this would be, I don't know how I would pay for it at all. I can't get a loan. My credit's shot. I'm not here to tell you my sob story, but I'm sure there are other homeowners in similar situations as me. Maybe they can get a loan to offset it, but on one income, it's extremely hard. And so if I can't pay that $12,000, I can't hook up, then what happens? You're gonna keep finding me on top of the taxes I can barely pay now. I'm always late on my taxes, getting my house out of tax sale. And with going to school right now, full-time for the next 2 years, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. And I can't sell my house. What am I supposed to do? Because I know, I understand all the pros of the sewer going in and how it raises the value of your homes. I get both sides, but right now my hands are tied and I just cannot afford it. And yeah, every day when I flush that toilet, take a shower, I do think of my septic overflowing and the consequences. Do I need a new septic? So it's a constant worry, but right now I just can't afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw someone else. Anyone else want to get up? Yep.
Good evening. Jonathan Bamber, 31 Park Place.
Can you just repeat your name?
I'm sorry, name and address.
Sure.
Can you repeat your name? I'm sorry.
31 Park Place. It's Bamber, B-A-M-B-E-R.
Thank you.
You know, I've taken this into careful consideration of the costs, and I purchased my house about 2 years ago, and at that time my septic was found to be in good standing. I feel that this will create a tremendous financial burden for me. I've expressed this to Andrew in the many phone calls that we've had. With that being said, I do sympathize with those that are affected with this system. I do commend the committee for their hard work in trying to keep the costs of said system down. However, the financial burden for what is essentially an amenity that I have and is functioning, and I understand every household has a different use case, has a different demand of what needs to be repaired. I've put a tremendous amount of money into my heating system and correcting things in my water pipes. I simply can't afford this. And I know I'm new to Flanders. I know many of you have lived in this area for a very long time, but I've made Flanders my home. I'd like to keep my home. So I strongly urge the committee to reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dale Webb, 22 Park Place, and also 57 Main Street. I have lived in Flanders. Well, I have not lived in, but I grew up in Flanders. I was born there. My brother still lives in the house that my father purchased in 1929. So our family's been in Flanders for a long, long time. I do understand and concerns both ways. My brother's a handicapped person and he lives by himself, but he does work and he is able to maintain staying in the house in Flanders since my mother passed away 10 years ago. So I understand the rob Peter to pay Paul type of situation that this kind of puts people in. The only thing I would like to say is I am in favor of it, even though it does continue to put me in that rob Peter to pay Paul situation. And I just think that, you know, as time goes, we all find a way to get by. So that's just what I would like to say. I am in favor of it, even though it is a financial burden. It's going to continue to be a financial burden as long as I want to keep my brother living in Flanders. So, but I also see the desperate need for it because our family has lived there for so long, and I know, you know, septics are, I think, a good thing for Flanders. So that's
Septics or sewers?
Sewers.
or sewers. I'm sorry, sewer system is a good thing for Flanders. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time?
May I say one more thing?
If you would like, go ahead.
Again, Matt Johnston, 19 Park Place. Listening to everyone talking, it comes to my mind that it doesn't sound like there's many people who are against the system as a whole. It's against the system for the cost. My request for the council, and this is certainly up to you, but under the circumstances, there are many people here who probably are going to have very significant hardships. If there is a way that the council can come up with a compromise of some sort that would allow for people that can show a hardship to be extended an amount of time to be able to, or to be forced to hook up, I understand that may have a cost on the other side, but if the council would at least consider that, it may make the overall project more workable for some of the people that you've heard from today. It is just a request that the council consider opening up or expanding the exemptions, or at least the time frame exemptions for some of the people that can show an actual hardship. I'm not going to say a loan is a hardship. It's a pain in the butt, but it's not a hardship. But I'm talking about for some of the folks I've heard, it sounds to me that maybe there's a way that the town can accommodate them under the circumstances and still put the project together. And if the council can find a way to do that, I certainly would think it would be helpful for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else from the public? Yes.
Maureen Lamb, L-A-M-M, 71 Main Street. I'm not a public speaker, but I'm listening to everybody, and I just want to say we are for the sewer system. I know we hear more of the negative, you know, the people that are against it. I ditto everything that Ray Wint wrote and his wife read, particularly that our systems that we have, my system's good. I'm a plumber's daughter. I know how to keep a system good. But if our systems were to be put in today, they wouldn't meet the standards that are required. So it is something we need to upgrade and bring to the present level of quality and life. So I say we are for the system.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public at this time? Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close it to the public. listening to everyone's comments and the concerns and all, and Andrew, and council, I mean, we know that it's something that eventually has to get done at some point because of the issues that are down in that area or will develop. That's why we looked at this. It's been going on for years and years, and we understand that. But I also understand the other side of it, listening to people about the financial burden of it. And I'm not going to propose that we don't go forward with it. What I'm going to propose is that we table it, and that we find some other alternate ways, if there's ways, before we finalize it. Are there ways to find other revenue that we can find? Are there other ways to offset costs? Do anything that we can do before we final vote on this, to see if there's any opportunities where we can help or do what we can do to try and make it a better, better price, or find ways to help the people that have financial hardships. I'm not sure. If Fred, you have anything you want to add to that, Fred?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Council President, that from a standpoint of the need to do this, but your concern is just the financial hardship.
Correct.
So I can't say that there's anything definitive out there that comes to mind where one particular property owner would be treated differently than others. But in the same vein, perhaps there's a way we could look at to structure this. We could at least investigate if there's a different way to structure this. And I don't know if Andrew spent a lot of time trying to get to this point and streamline all of the costs and these efficiencies. So I defer to him to talk a little bit further about that.
Yeah, just to see if there's anything else.
We can go back to the drawing board. It seems like one of the biggest concerns is the upfront cost of closing down the septic.
Right.
Initially, when we spoke to our bond counsel, since that part of the project is technically part of, a private property and part of the homeowner's responsibility, that part of the project was not included in the financing of the project. We could go back and see if somehow we could still try to include that part of it, so that could bring down the cost a little bit.
That would bring it down, like, just based on all the estimates. They're only estimates, right? But if it's $12,000 to $15,000 to close a system, and we're able to, and again, like you said, we're on private property, there's some issues, but if we're able to work out a way to do that, then that's a payment of like $500 a year over time.
Right.
That takes the upfront cost, and that's where, even those people who are having credit difficulties, the township is basically, although we can't fund the project, we can back the project and give every resident an opportunity, and the collateral is the sense that it's a municipal obligation, so it's against your property if you don't pay. But you don't have to go out and find that, and at the same time, we don't have to worry, and none of the residents have to worry if someone leaves their septic open. But we'd have to make sure we can do that, because as the administrator said, there could be issues that bond counsel has with respect to the lending aspect of this, because it involves going on private property. But it sounds like that may make a difference as to where we are right now if we were able to figure out a way to significantly diminish the upfront cost, because you weigh that against someone who has tomorrow could have a $50,000 septic bill where we're not part of this public-private type of partnership, but that may be a good solution, as Andrew said.
Try to research that.
And just to clarify, the total cost of this project was under $1 million. That total was not being put onto the residents as the special assessment. Only 55% of that cost was going to be included in that special assessment. There was a small portion, I believe it was $71,000, which was for road resurfacing and curbing, which the general public was going to finance because that's a general improvement. 55 was going to be the special assessment, and the other 45% was going to be paid through by the water utility through the sewer fees.
Sewer utility.
Sewer utility.
Sewer township.
Through the sewer fees. So, and again, that was mirrored from the Bud Lake system, just so it was fair, and what we did 20, 30 years ago was done today. So I just wanted to point that out.
Mr. Rowland?
Can we, Fred, can we move forward with doing the first, is this up for first reading or second?
This is second.
This is
That's
the
the
final
second.
adoption, right?
But, if we table it, how long do we have to table? Before, is there anything that would happen is if we table it for X amount of time that the the ordinance would automatically die?
Well, from that standpoint, so long as you act on it before the year's out.
Okay.
So I think we would, Colleen, Ms. Label?
One of my concerns would be any delay, prices go up all the time. I would hate to wait a couple of months only to have the project cost more money. Would be
Understood.
one thing, and
I agree.
that would be a concern. And the other thing is, how many years, Andrew, is it going to take for this project before people have to start hooking up to it?
The initial plan was that once construction is complete, the residents would have a year to decommission their septic and tie into our system.
So if construction started today, talking about at least a year before we would be to that point?
My initial, I don't know how my schedule, if we started construction today, Gene, I think about 3 months of construction.
The original decision was to try to go out to bid. Plans have been ready for months. It will go out to bid in April or May. So we thought we could get into construction during the summer season, so we wouldn't have problems with school buses. Probably, I think about three to 4 months at the most. So we're hoping to get the construction like in June, July, August. So now, if you table it for several months, you just have to consider when you wanted to actually go into the project. And if it's approved in 3 or 4 months from now, I think you really want to go till next year. And so you avoid the winter and you avoid interference with school buses.
And the gas company, when are they planning on putting their pipes in?
I have a meeting with them next week, so I'll have to revisit with them.
Because, yeah, that's a concern.
Well, we're going to have them come in before
We
the
wanted them to
sewers.
come in first, but,
Right.
you know.
We want them to come in first and,
But I
you know, be done with.
I can't, you know, force them to get in there. If they don't get in
Right.
there,
Yeah. The other thing too, I just want to say that I sell real estate. As Phyllis in the front row, we have the same experiences. This past year, I've had 4 properties that very unexpectedly, they had to put in a $50,000 system. There was one just right down the street. When they bought the house, everything was supposedly good. My people bought the house, and when they did the inspection, it turned out what they had done years ago, it was a cesspool, and they modified it to be a septic. But when they modified it, the pipe was put up instead of down. They just really messed the whole thing up. And here, these people, unfortunately, the seller, the husband had a terrible, situation with cancer. Their finances were absolutely horrible. They were going from a beautiful home into an apartment because they couldn't afford anything anymore, and they had to put in a $50,000 septic system. And it was really sad, but these things are happening. I have another situation on the other side of Bud Lake right now. Again, the people there in Texas, and they find out their septic failed twice. $50,000 to put it in. And you just don't know when it's going to happen. You think it's working, you think there's no problem, and all of a sudden, and you can't get a bond to pay off in 20 years. It's like all of a sudden you got to find $50,000, and it doesn't happen. And the other thing that happened, I always tell my own personal story, when they put in the Bud Lake sewer system, I bought my house, I heard we were going to get sewers, I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. Then it got to be where every 6 weeks to 8 weeks I had to empty this what I thought was a septic, but it was really a cesspool. And we went through that for a couple of years. Finally, I just had to put a new septic in, and no sooner it got finished, we got the word that sewers were going in. I'm like, okay. And I actually was the last one to be hooked up, made sure I got as much use out of my septic as I could before. But I loved it. I really wanted sewers. I'm glad that I have sewers. And just even with being in real estate and seeing time and time again with the issues with the failed septics, and it's just, and the people, you hear the same thing. I can't believe it. It's always worked. I have it emptied all the time. What do you mean my baffles are no good? What do you mean that my, and I had situations where the distribution boxes were crushed because stuff got moved around the yard and the boulder was on top and that went. So it's just all these things you just don't expect to have happen, and it's a huge huge financial hardship. And last but not least, our wonderful state, a couple of years ago, Matt's laughing, we had this conversation, Matt, you can't pass title on your house if you have a cesspool. In Old Flanders, I know there's about a dozen of the houses that actually have a cesspool, not a septic, for one thing. Also, I'm finding out the hard way that some of the quote-unquote cesspools were tried to be made into septics that don't pass an inspection. So that's the other problem. But you can't sell your house unless you have it put in. So if you think you have a system that's working, you know, it's just a gamble. So it's just really hard. I hope we can find a way to find the financial solution to our folks who are really stressed, because it's a horrible feeling to not be able to pay the bill. But it'd be worse if you had to put in 50. So it's very difficult.
We all keep hearing that infrastructure, and everybody wants better roads, bridges, and such. But when it comes time that we have to pay for it, that's when we decide, maybe we don't need it as much. EPA regulations, especially in this state of New Jersey, do not get less stringent, they get worse.
They get worse, yep.
All of a sudden, they could discover some might in Old Flanders, which requires now setbacks to be X amount, and you have to raise your property 3 feet off the ground to protect something. With that being said, I recognize the hardship and the burden. And I'm all for tabling this ordinance so that we can find more creative ways to lessen the financial burden of those in this area, to hook up and maybe structure it in a way where the impact isn't as much. But unfortunately, this can has been kicked down the road, up the street and around the corner too many times, and the day is going to come that this council is going to be judged if we do not act and move forward with this. It will be judged, and the judgment is not going to be pretty, because you got more than likely those residents will be coming in pitchforks because why didn't we act when we did? I, for one, my previous house was in a sewerage system. I was glad that it was, because I know the expense of a septic system, and I do not want to do that again. I would never want to go back to a septic system. And thank goodness we have modern facilities where we have city water and sewer.
Joe, I just thought one other thing. Also, Old Flanders has, many times I heard residents say how when the township decided to put in public water, they just did it. And all of a sudden you had public water. Well, I have to tell you, there's a new thing going around with well water these days called Alpha Gross, which is essentially it is radon in the water. And that just came about, and that state is now, as Alex was just saying, they keep making things more stringent. Now you have to have your well water tested for the Alpha Gross, and you have to be treated for that. Thankfully, we have tested all of our, I'm chair of the Board of Health too, so this has been a really big consideration in our health department. And we tested all of the water for all of our public systems, and everybody's good. We had a system, there was a vacant house, and it was sold, it got tested, and it had a seriously high Alpha Gross, and everybody in that neighborhood had to get tested for the Alpha Gross. Some had it, some didn't. So that's another situation that comes up, that you don't even, all of a sudden you have to have a couple $1,000 system put in because your water needs to, you need to get the radon in the water is very dangerous, in my opinion. I'm not a this is not my field, but you're taking a shower and you have hot, steamy water and you're breathing it in. That scares me more than if it's just in the house in the air, because it's concentrated going right in. But anyway, that's just a point I wanted to make, that here nobody would have, didn't even think about radon in your water way back in the day. Now it's a reality. And so thank God you guys have public water there, so you don't have to worry about that part. Thank you.
Thank you. What I am suggesting, look, I'm sympathetic to both sides, believe me, and I really believe that the council is in favor of moving forward with this, there's no question. The question is if there's an opportunity for us to find a way to make it more cost-effective. I don't think anybody here, and I'm not speaking for all of us, are not saying we don't want to move forward with it. I think we do, because obviously we got this far. The question becomes, can we find a more economical way for the residents that have financial hardship, which would make it, as the attorney was saying, Fred, if we could find a way to finance that for them, it makes it much easier. No one has to lay out that cash up front, and it's a small fee every year that we're responsible for, Bonnie. You don't have to worry about your credit and all. So I think it's something I would like to table it for 30 to 45 days tops, to be able to come up with any solutions that we can and present it to people and say, here's an opportunity that we can present. Like I said, I believe we're all in favor of moving forward with it, but I want to exhaust every possibility we have first. That, you know, this is something that was just brought up, and I know Fred might have something else he wants to bring up with it, but I think I would just suggest to the council that we table it for 30 to 45 days until we can exhaust our possibilities. At that point, we'll vote on it, and in most cases, more than likely, we're all in favor of it, but I want to exhaust the possibilities of finding resources for the residents that are having a hardship with it, because I can sympathize, and I know it will be difficult. Fred, did you have something
Yeah,
else?
just from a timing standpoint, I think, you know, we have to be mindful of what the engineer's saying and what the administrator's saying. I mean, I think we can put our heads together, because there's so much information that's already been put together to try to address this issue and come back with an answer. Andrew, how long do you think to keep things on track and
I think
to get an
before the
answer?
next council meeting, we'll know if we could restructure the financing somehow.
Right.
If we can, then we would have to probably redo the special assessment ordinance, but that should still give Gene enough time to,
So 2 weeks is what we're saying, basically.
yeah.
Mr. Roman?
Yeah, I wouldn't put the 30 to 45 days
Right.
to table it. I would rather table it until the administration does their due diligence in finding alternative ways in order to finance the deal with the mindset that it would reduce the impact on the residents in that area. So
That's a good suggestion.
So with that being said, I make a motion that we table the ordinance 9-2019.
I'll second it.
I just want to add, I understand what Mr. Roman is saying, but if we could table it to a specific date, there's two things we are able to do in between. For an example, if we're confident we can get an answer one way or the other for the next meeting, and we list this for the next meeting and we announce this tonight, that also helps the clerk's office, because we're able to just carry this.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if we're not ready, we can try to notify the governing body and the residents who are here if we think we're going to need more time, but we can bring this back for a discussion on the 2nd, if that would be okay. So we may come back on the 2nd and have a solution that really addresses the concerns raised, or we could come back at the next meeting, and in order to address the issues, we may need to reintroduce this and start all over again as well. But at least we have a benchmark for the 2nd of April. Doesn't mean we would necessarily have to act, but we'd bring it back hopefully to have some answers to the questions. If that, I defer to the administrator, but we may, if we have no date, we're gonna have to start again and re-advertise, because it's a bond ordinance.
Then I'll amend my motion to table ordinance number 9-2019 to April 2nd, 2019.
Second, yeah, Mr. Yes. Any other council discussion on it, Ms. Latham?
Yeah, I just had one more question. One question people were asking tonight was, what is the rate of interest rate finance charge? What is that, Sherry, for this?
The rate of the assessment correlates to the rate on the bond.
Mhm.
So since we have a great bond rating, and right now we have low interest rates, the interest rate that we're going to then pass through to the rate payers is going to be low. So I think when I did the financial analysis, I figured between 2 and 4, so.
Between 2 and
Yeah.
4, so that, and 2 and 4%.
Yeah, so it has to equal the rate that we are going to borrow the money.
Correct.
Right,
Okay.
and which is a better rate than most of us
Absolutely.
could
Yeah, then we can
get
it
anywhere
right
else,
off the
so.
town's credit.
That's
Any other
correct.
discussion from council?
Right, so a vote here, Council President, is not to move forward with the ordinance, it's just to bring the discussion to the meeting of April 2nd for a decision,
Correct.
right?
And we're all in favor of that.
Yes.
We have a roll call, please?
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebaud?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. So the meeting again on April 2nd will address this. We are going to do everything we can to address the concerns, believe me. It's something that we really will look into to see what we can do. We know it's necessary to be done, but we don't want to do the best we can to make it less stressful on people. So if we can get this done, it'll be much better for everyone involved. If you have, let me see where we are. I'll get back to the, I guess we
We
can
have
continue with the
questions.
public. Yeah. If you have, you can go up there to the thing again. You have just, we know who you are, right? Okay. Yep.
Again, my name is Susan Anderson. I just have a question. Is there anything on the state or the federal side that can help offset the cost of this to the homeowners?
I haven't been able to find anything.
I mean, we look.
We've looked.
Yeah, we've discussed, for example, like I know Andrew and I spoke about the federal government, but unfortunately, it's more rural communities and smaller communities that even qualify for applications. So it's very, and if you don't qualify, it's not worth going through the process, you know.
Right,
like,
right.
But we've looked at, you know, there's like Department of Agriculture, believe it or not, has certain kind of grant programs and things like that, and all of them have said so far, at least the ones we're familiar with, that you have to be of a certain size and a certain economic makeup that the township would qualify.
Okay. And the other question was, I know the cost was like around $12,000 approximately for the homeowner to hook up. Does that include closing off our current septic, or is there something that we need to do after the fact?
That estimate was to close the septic and to connect your service line from the house to the gravity pumps.
Okay, but do we have to have the septic pumped and other issues with it?
Well, that's
as
part of the
well?
whole closure
Oh, okay,
process.
all that's
Yeah.
uncovered? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Sam Buckley, 11 Park Place, Flanders. I like this idea about potentially lumping the closure of the septic systems into the overall, because that does decrease the upfront cost for people that are going to make, how do I get that money? But the other thing that we all know is if we club something like that together, the $12,000 cost for somebody to do an individual system might come down considerably, because you're going to do all the systems at once with one or two contractors versus individual contractors having to mobilize individually. So I just think there's a potential big cost savings there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
John Petzinger, 70 Main Street. I don't want to take up too much more time. I think everybody's in favor for the sewers. We're not in favor for the finances. As you had mentioned, Mr. Roman, it's been kicked down the road 6 years, right? So why hasn't a more creative cost to alleviate the cost of the homeowners not figured out yet? That's my question to you.
Well, one, it's been kicked down the road more than 6 years, and this
Well,
is the
that-
furthest that we've ever been. So that's why we're at this point now, because every time we've gotten before this point, that previous councils, and I was part of them, backed down. We decided, it's an expense, it's too much, for whatever reasons, we backed down. But this is the furthest that we've gone. And so now that we have raw fixed numbers, then we can actually go and, try to see if we can come up with some more creative financing items.
But there were other proposals that were more expensive.
higher.
Much higher, much higher.
Okay, that very well may be, but here we are talking about, doing other things. Why haven't these avenues been addressed? And I just hope you guys can come up with something clever enough to reduce this cost. If I can be of any assistance, Andrew has my number. I'll do what I can on my end. But just for the record, I don't think anybody here is against the project. It's the cost. So I just wanted to make that known.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
I just have a question, and this might be more a question to you. I know what kind of septic systems at the house at 22 Park Place. So we're talking about costs. Maybe not everybody, and if somebody has a leach field and stuff like that, may not be addressed. But is the homeowner allowed to close the septic system up himself?
Offhand, I don't know. I would think not. I think you need a certified
It has to be-
contractor
yeah.
to close it in.
Yeah.
There's a
licensed
procedure,
septic
a DEP
operator.
has a
Yeah.
whole bunch of guidelines to follow,
Yeah.
right? And
So if you, just say, you know, I can plumb my own house, I can file for a plumbing permit, and I'm not a plumber, but I can do my own plumbing. Right.
But you file for a permit and it gets inspected.
Correct. So if I filed for a permit to close my septic system and it was inspected and I met the criteria of the guidelines,
We'll have to find out what's.
My engineer's coming up, so I'm sure he has
Yeah.
a technical answer.
And I think here's an example of the state of New Jersey EPA regulations.
Yeah, I think it would be.
That drive you crazy.
As long as it's closed in accordance with the DEP regulations, and then it's accepted by the health department. But it's got to be in strict accordance with DEP regulations.
I'm not sure if you as a homeowner know how to comply
Right.
with the DEP regulations.
right, but if I researched it
Yeah.
and were able to,
And the health department signs off on it and
Yeah.
feels that you met that criteria.
Yeah, talk
Then
to Bob in the health department.
you could
He
defer
does our
that cost.
septics.
Is that not correct?
And I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there showing you how to do it.
Well, yeah, there's something for everybody out there, but just another question. I mean, you know, if you're...
I'll talk to the health department and see what's involved.
Particularly, that was in my mind, you know, because I can hire that man right there to go get me a load of certified, you know, fill to clean in. They're not going to hire somebody to pump the system. I can jackhammer the bottom of the floor out, so it's, you know, whatever the criteria is. And I don't know if that's an answer for anybody else out there, but it was looking at trying to be one of my answers to defer cost.
Find out. Yes, sir.
Matt Johnston, 19 Park Place. Question for Mr. Semrau. I don't think we've heard anyone here say that they're against the project. Can't you bifurcate this ordinance? In other words, really what we're talking about is not the cost of the the sewer system being installed. It's the cost for the homeowners to install it themselves. That's the issue right now. That's been the issue. Isn't there any way to keep the process moving, bifurcate this, so that you can address that particular issue, which can be addressed in a different ordinance down the road, because it's separate and apart from this ordinance, so that this doesn't hold things up. But my fear has always been that this is going to stop. And all you need is, a couple things to happen, and this is going to slow it down. We're not going to get the sewers installed this summer. And I think it's a paramount thing that we move forward with the project. We just address the real issue, which is the cost to the community,
Right.
the individual community members.
Yeah, I think to answer
later.
your question, I understand the question, and it's a good question, just like you raised a good point about the separate cost. But before the governing body and the members of the public hear a decision, I think we should have that fact there as well, so that if there's residents concerned and we do have a solution, they'll know what we're getting into. And if we can't help in that situation, then that should also be disclosed to the governing body before they vote. But we've set a real short timeline, very aggressive, to try to stay on track, but at the same time, to get an answer to that aspect that's been raised, that seems to be really highlighted tonight as the difference, so
Yeah,
we're
also,
gonna
if
be right on
if
it.
that part of the project can be included in the special assessment, then those numbers in the special assessment need to be all redone anyway.
Yeah, we
So
might have to-
it's not realistic to bifurcate this.
It might be the case. We would still want to present that to the governing body as this is part one and there'll be part two. But as the administrator said, but if bond counsel tells us or instructs us that we have to do this all at once, we'd be ahead of ourselves if we do that.
I will defer to you, and I would just like to remind the board that is here, the council, this has been a long time, and there are going to be people at some point that are going to have serious situations if their septic fails between now and the time that this is approved. And that's a very real possibility, and if it does happen to one of the people here, whether they have the financial ability or not, they're going to have to deal with it. And I would hate to see, after all the time that this town has put into this, to let it fall apart over something that you could probably deal with in different ways.
Yeah, no, I
So-
understand, but I think a 2-week turnaround is very ambitious, and we're going to try to hold to that.
Well, thank you for your time, and I certainly appreciate it.
Hi, Brian Malcolm, 67 Main Street. I have, I guess my question is more directed to the engineer, and actually 2 questions. Power for the pumps, where is that being supplied from? From the home?
Gene, you're going to have to come up, Gene.
So it's your right for walking all the way back there.
Yeah, sit in the front, Jay.
With the grinder pump, there's an electrical unit that's going to be placed against the house.
Okay.
It's going to be tied in, okay?
So it will be pre-installed and you just have to tie in when you do the hookup?
The homeowner is responsible for the connection, okay?
Right. At the same time you close the septic, you would hook into the...
Correct.
Okay. I'm right by the bridge.
I think
The
we've
bridge
talked
I'm
before,
talking
yes.
about?
Oh, yeah.
No, actually, you talked to my neighbor. Tito.
Okay.
I just have concerns because there was, before the road got paved, there was a line going right across, it looked like where the bridge ended, okay? And I can tell you exactly where that line was, because if I go across the street and look at my
What kind of line?
foundation, a demarcation line, like a crack in the pavement.
Okay.
I can go and look at my foundation and there's a corresponding crack right there.
Okay.
My only concern is, what's gonna happen, they're gonna be digging deep.
In that area, we're doing directional drilling.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not excavating across the across the culvert. We're gonna be probably, was it 60 or 70 feet on each side? You know, nothing? 60 feet on each side is where there's gonna be a pit in the roadway, and they're gonna directional drill underneath the culvert.
60 feet.
On each, 60 feet on each side of the culvert, because we're gonna be directional drilling, and you only can drill, it's like 10 feet for every 2 feet you go down. So they're gonna be like 60 feet away from the culvert, they're gonna directional drill, go underneath the culvert, and come back up.
I'll talk to you a little bit afterwards. I'm not
Sure.
sure. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this time? Okay. I'm confident administration and Sherry will look into this quickly and get us an answer back, and I'm sure we'll hopefully have some other options in 2 weeks. Okay, moving on. We have 12 consent resolutions. Does anyone have any questions on those? Seeing none, Mr. Mania, would you move resolutions
Joe?
12? I'm sorry.
I think we'll maybe take a couple
Okay,
minutes.
whoever wants to leave, can leave. That's fine.
Sorry.
That's all right, I
just
didn't see
saw
him getting up. I know.
Yeah, some people.
We're almost through anyway.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good
night, Gene.
Good night. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you, fella. Talk. Where's Sam? Sam, I was trying to call him. If they could find a way. Yeah, you have a lot of them. See what happens. Thank you.
Joe?
Gene?
All right, Joe.
Gene,
Joe, all right.
Oh, yeah, Gene, you can go use the office if you need to. Okay. Continuing, we had, Mr. Mania was moving resolutions 2 through 13.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Did we? Anyone, comments, questions? Anyone?
You know,
Yep.
just in case.
Yes.
I'll move resolutions 2 through 13, because I don't think I heard that, just in case.
Second?
Do we have any other discussion? Anyone from the public? Close to the public. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart? Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Mr. Roman, would you please move the bill list?
I move for approval of the bill list.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Any comments, questions? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, close to the public. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. We have two appointments by the mayor. We need a roll call. Is Planning Board, Catherine Delafalusa, member Class 4, 3-year unexpired term, expires 12/31/21. Environmental Committee, Catherine Delafalusa. Planning Board liaison, 3-year unexpired term, 12/31/21. Do we have a motion to accept those two appointments?
So moved.
Second?
Anyone discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. And we have one appointment from council for Ethics Committee, Louis Condora, 5-year term expires 12/31/23. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Wait a minute. You can't close the door.
Oh, yeah, one of them's got to stay open.
It has to stay
Just got to
open.
tell them to.
Yeah,
That's better.
technically, yeah.
It's
It's
open.
open. It's open. Do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Administrative reports.
Nothing.
Nothing. Old business. Anybody have any old business? Seeing none, does anybody have any new business? Seeing none, any legal matters?
Council President, we have 4 legal matters we'd like to go over tonight in executive session. They're all under pending litigation, so I'll pass on my report otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Council reports, Mr. Amianda, anything on Board of Ed or seniors?
Yes, Mr. President. Board of Education held a special meeting or board retreat on Sunday, March 10, 2019, at the Administration Building, 9 a.m. The board attorney reviewed board's role and responsibilities, and the superintendent of schools reviewed his entry plan and the district goals. Mount Olive seniors, Mount Olive Senior Citizens Club celebrated St. Patrick's Day today on Tuesday, March 19, 2019 at 11:30 a.m. Seniors appreciate what the mayor and the council are doing for them. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ferrante, anything on Lake Environmental or Library?
Nothing.
Ms. Laybow, anything on, where are you? Open Space, Board of Health or Stigma, I'm sorry.
Open space, we had our meeting last week, and we had reached out to Andrew and to Sue to get information for the one land donation that we're waiting for. We got some movement on that, which is very exciting. And we have 2 scouts that are being, getting their Eagle Scouts coming up in the next couple of months. They did projects with Open Space, and so that is very exciting also. And we're so excited too because we finally were able to start using the equipment in the conference room so we can put our maps up on the screen and see everything, because we missed not having our maps in there. So that was all good, and we're also working on some other projects getting to the bottom line. I just wanted to say that the scouts who, Colin McCutcheon and Christopher Solowaski, is that Solowaski? Both did projects with the members of the Open Space Committee, so that's really exciting all the way around. All the scouts do great jobs when they all do, but it's really nice with the, with that you're joining forces with projects that you're trying to get done. The other thing, the Board of Health, we had to cancel our meetings. We're going to meet tomorrow night, and just to reiterate what I said earlier, with the meeting, we're still working on the gross alpha issues around town, making sure everybody has ability to have their well tested. And then we have the stigma-free. I just want to say that County College, they have several students that are writing articles and, talking about their own situations in their life when they felt that they were stigmatized, and rising above it and doing really well. So it's and more and more towns and school districts are taking on the stigma-free pledge, and I think it's a wonderful thing that more and more people are becoming aware of it. And that's it.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Maney, anything on legislative or planning?
Planning board, we approved a moving company that came in from Hackensack, and they're going to build a warehouse on Waterloo Road.
Thank you. Mr. Roman, anything on recreation or pride?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time? Closed to the public. Council comments, Mr. Amianda?
Amen.
Mr. Ferrante?
None.
Ms. Leibau?
I say welcome back, Mr. Mania.
Thank you.
Good to
Mr.
have
Mania?
you.
None.
Mr. Roman?
I'd like to thank whoever put my name on a list. I am now getting coupons for AARP and the such. So
Woohoo!
thank you.
It starts early, doesn't it?
You're very fortunate.
Do we have a motion? Oh, wait, we have to go, Mr. Mania, we're going into executive session.
Okay.
If you would get us into executive session, at that point, we'll ask everyone in the chambers to leave for the session. You're welcome back after, but we'll be done with the agenda.
According to Section 7 and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, I make a motion we move into executive session to discuss Combi landfill, noting that the minutes will be available upon conclusion of the issue.
Second.
And if I may, just also add the matter of Red Maple Lane, that's under attorney-client privilege, and also the matter of the...
Sayonara.
What is it, the Gold Mine? Gold Mine Motel, and under contract, the sale of the 57 acres.